Happy 2020 Part 3, everybody. I hope everyone had a great New Year's. It's been a hot minute since we've seen a balance patch. A lot of players have been begging for one since our last one was almost 4 months ago, I think. And honestly, I can't disagree. Half the weapons and legends in the game currently, at least to my humble opinion, are beyond busted right now. And for someone like me who cares seriously about balance, it's hard to look at. And especially fight against. Gauntlets, sword, bow, axe, scythe, spear, they're all very strong in the current meta right now. I can see people disagreeing about spear, which I understand. I won't go too into detail about them since this isn't weapon analysis. Although, with the most recent Christmas patch, we saw new test features. New test features can be very interesting to see. Sometimes they might alter the game greatly, like the forgotten about double GC, and some are just visual changes, like the recent gravity cancel and dodging features. Sometimes they don't make it into the game at all, and sometimes they get changed to the player's likings and put into the game. These new test features change the way Brawlhalla is played, at least according to most pros, which I can agree with. If you haven't seen the new test features or just don't understand them, then I'll do my best to explain them. We'll go over the smaller change first, which is a change to directional gravity canceling. The window for performing gravity cancel from a directional dodge has been reduced from 5 frames to 3 frames. Honestly, this change in particular I think is fine, although it's supposed to solve some issues where players would accidentally do a different maneuver than intended. I've seen console players complain about this being a bit hard to do now, which I understand, but over time I think players will grow to see this fit into the game just as well as it did before. With that change out of the way, let's talk about the juicy stuff. The dodge cooldown. There was a lot of stuff I didn't know about dodging before this patch. Stuff that I never even took into consideration of even being a thing in the first place. Dodging in the current game modes works like this. Dodging in the air gives you a 3-second cooldown, in which you can't dodge again until a timer is up. If you dodge on the ground, the timer is just 1 second. If you dodge in the air and then land on the ground, your timer will be set down to 1 second. In this case, dodging was a bit hard to punish. Usually players would dodge in the air and then touch the ground as quickly as possible to get their dodge back quicker. Honestly, I didn't think a lot about this change. I thought it didn't really affect the game that much, but once I looked more in depth with it, I realized it changes the game a lot. These new changes are meant to counter that, and honestly, they're some of the biggest changes we've seen in a hot minute. The new universal cooldown time for dodging is 2.5 seconds. That's it. Which means that dodging in the air got buffed, and dodging on the ground got heavily nerfed. This change proves to support some weapons incredibly well, some in a good way and some in a terrible way. I think this change overall is an amazing change to Brawlhalla's dodge system. It makes you think about how you want to use your dodge more carefully rather than throwing it out and having no punishment in doing so. Some of the weapons prove to benefit greatly from this change, and can pull off more true combos when your opponent doesn't have a dodge, and in some cases, jumps. Some of the most noticeable weapons to benefit from this change are Guitars, Canon, Scythe, Gauntlets, Spear, Greatsword, and probably more that I'm missing. Each weapon probably benefits from this change in general, but these weapons benefit more than the others. Guitars were just about average before this change. They required you to do some good reads to pull off some good damage, and honestly, they're one of the most underplayed weapons in the game. With these new changes, Guitars can string much more easily from grounded dodges, and honestly, if some of the top tier weapons got the nerfs they deserved after this change goes live, Guitars can be one of the best weapons. Canon is a weapon I personally can't do well with. It's very difficult to do so anyways. Although these new changes benefit Canon in a good way. Once again, making it easier to string stuff together. I remember seeing this post on Reddit that you can basically do a 0 to death off of 1 read, but that'd only be if you dodge stupidly. Canon with these changes I think would make Canon around A tier, and honestly I'm fine with that. It's one of the hardest weapons in Brawlhalla to play. Scythe is one of the best weapons right now, and honestly I'm sure we're all tired of fighting the same legends over and over. Some of Scythe's moves prove to be too strong for their own good, and reading with Scythe is actually easier to do than with other weapons. These new changes benefit Scythe pretty good as well, and make it even more busted than before. It's much easier to string stuff with Scythe's grounded kit since the grounded dodge cooldown is much longer, and honestly I'd like to see some changes to Scythe where it isn't that easy to do so. The weapon has already been the most played for years now, and we seriously need to change to that. Same case with Gauntlets, but worse. Gauntlets are another string weapon, and they benefit greatly from these changes. Gauntlets are already way too strong for their own good, and with the new dodge features, stringing with Gauntlets is easier than ever to do. You can get true combos that you can never get before, and it makes the weapon way too easy to play in my opinion. I'll say it constantly throughout the video, I think the new dodge features are great, but we desperately need a balance patch to nerf these weapons massively once the features go live. Spear is also one that I feel like needs some nerfing honestly. You see, when dodging against Spear before the patch, if you dodge, touch the ground, and then got hit by a side light down light, then you could dodge right after, since the grounded dodge timer was so short. Usually if you dodge, you'd be getting hit by side light, down light, GC, down light, Sair. Now, with the new dodge cooldown, no matter where you dodge, if you get hit by a spear side light, you will 100% be stuck in a 4-piece spear combo. I'm honestly not a fan of this buff specifically because it makes spear players only go for one move, and as a spear player myself, it isn't fun to play against, nor fun to use. I would personally love to see Downlight Stare become untrue so spear doesn't benefit so much from this change, but that nerf I feel like I'm completely alone on. Greatsword wasn't an overpowered weapon before this patch, and in fact, I don't think it was the bottom of the barrel bad, but it's kind of difficult to use. With the Greatsword being a weapon mainly used on the ground, enemies would usually dodge out of a combo fairly fast. With the new changes, you can string enemies together much better, and it makes Greatsword feel so much more smooth to play, rather than just hoping your opponent doesn't dodge out of a combo immediately. I think if these changes went through, Greatsword would be in an awesome spot balance-wise. Now I'm absolutely sure that I missed out on some weapons that benefit from this. Lance probably does, Hammer might, Bow probably will since it's another weapon mainly used on the ground, but those weapons I think benefit less from these changes than the rest. Once again, I love these changes. It makes a lot of weapons feel smoother to play, and they reward the player much more greatly when getting a dodge read. Although once these changes go through, I think the devs need to seriously consider a bounce patch before the first big tournament of the year. I would hate to see another tournament go into play with the current bounce patch plus test features. Some weapons prove to be way too powerful for their own good with the test features, and I think some good nerfs to a lot of weapons would give us a lot to look forward to. Some weapons right now have moves that are almost unpunishable. I see it in pro play, and I fight it every day, and if those moves were fixed, I think we'd be in a pretty good era of Brawlhalla. Balance-wise anyways. But of course that wraps it up for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed my opinion on the test features. Thanks for watching, and of course, keep on brawling.